Today, our group will be presenting about the respiratory system, which is one of the most vital systems in the human body. Let's begin with the introduction. On the left side of the slide, you can see a table showing the main structures of the respiratory system and medical combining forms. These are often used in medical terms. For example, nose, naso, sinuses, sinuso, pharynx, pharyngo, laryngo, epiglottis, epiglotto, trachea, tracheo, bronchi, broncho and bronchio, alveoli, alveolo, lungs, pneumono and pulmono. Now, on the right side, what is the respiratory system? It is a system responsible for the exchange of gases, especially oxygen and carbon dioxide, between the body and the environment. Every few seconds, our brain sends signals that trigger breathing, which allows air to move in and out of the lungs. This process is called as ventilation. Then, the oxygen from the lung is exchanged with carbon dioxide in the blood. This is called external respiration. Next, the circulatory system takes over and transports these gases to the body cells and tissues. When the cells use oxygen to perform activities, it's called cellular respiration, which support the metabolism. In short, the respiratory system works closely with other systems to help keep us alive and functioning. So next, let's take a closer look at the two main parts of the respiratory system, the upper respiratory system and the lower respiratory system. Starting with the upper respiratory system, which includes the nose, which is the main entrance for air, the tonsils, which helps protect the body from infection, the paranasal sinuses, which are air-filled spaces that help warm and humidify the air we breathe, the pharynx, a muscular tube that serves as a pathway for both air and food, the epiglottis, a flap-like structure that prevents food from entering the airway, and the larynx, also known as the voice box, which produces sounds and protects the trachea. Moving on to the lower respiratory system, which includes 1. The trachea, also known as the windpipe, which carries air down to the lungs, the bronchi, which are two main branches that lead into each lung, the alveoli, tiny air sacs where gas exchange happens, and the lungs, which are the main organs of respiration. Each of these parts play an important role in making sure oxygen enters our body and carbon dioxide is removed efficiently.
The function of the nose is when air enters the body through the nose and passes through the nasal cavity, which is the interior portion of the nose. The nostrils are the external openings of the nose, and the nasal septum is a wall of the cartilage that divides the nose into two equal sections. The septum is a wall that separates two chambers. Tonsils and adenoids are part of the lymphatic system. Their function is to protect the body from the infection coming through the nose or the mouth. Palatal tonsils is located at the back of the mouth. Nasopharyngeal tonsils are higher up, behind the nose and the roof of the mouth. Paranasal sinuses are filled cavities lined with the mucous membrane. It is located in the bone of the skull. Paranasal sinuses produce the sound by giving the resonance the voice. It is also can produce the mucus to provide the lubrication for the tissues of the nasal cavity. Pharynx has three parts, which is nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx. Nasopharynx is only used for the respiratory system. Respiratory system is to transport of air and opens into the oropharynx. For oropharynx, it's shared by the respiratory and digestive system. They also transport the air, foods, and fluids downward into the laryngopharynx. Laryngopharynx is shared by the both of the respiratory and digestive system. Air, food, and fluids continue downward to the opening of the esophagus and one pipe, which is trachea. The function of the epiglottis is to act as a protective flap during the swallowing. It is to prevent the food and liquids from entering into the one pipe, which is trachea, during swallowing. For the last part of the upper tract is larynx. It is to protect and supported by a series of 9 separate cartilage. It also contains the vocal cords. During breathing, the cords are separated to let air pass. During speech, they close together and produce the sound.
Now, let's take a closer look at the lower respiratory tract. This part of the respiratory system includes trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and lungs, including the alveoli. Its main function is to transport air to the lungs and help in gas exchange, where the oxygen enters the blood and the carbon dioxide leaves the blood. The trachea, also called as the windpipe, is the main airway to transport the air to the lung. As air passes through it, the trachea filters, warms, and moistens the air. The rings of cartilage in the trachea help keep it open so that air can flow freely. Now, at the bottom of the trachea is split into two primary bronchi, which go into the each lung. These bronchi continue branching into secondary and tertiary bronchi, and eventually into bronchioles. All these branches are like a tree, getting smaller and smaller, and they help deliver oxygen-rich air deep into the lungs. Now, let's take a look at the lungs, which are the most essential organ in our respiratory system. The lungs are responsible for gas exchange. That means they help bring oxygen in our body and remove carbon dioxide. They are safely protected inside the thoracic cage. The left lung has two lobes and is slightly smaller than the right lung because it curves at the cardiac nerve to make space for the heart. Meanwhile, the right lung has three lobes. It is slightly shorter than the left lung because the diaphragm sits higher than on that side to make room for the liver. At the end of each bronchiole, we find alveoli, also known as air sacs. These are very tiny, great blood clusters that are very important for breathing. This is where gas exchange happens. Oxygen enters the blood and carbon dioxide leaves the blood through the walls of the alveoli. The alveoli have very thin and elastic walls which allow oxygen to move from the air into our blood and carbon dioxide to move out of our blood and into the lungs to be exhaled.
I will explain the mechanism of respiration. Respiration have involved two major steps, which is breathing and gas exchange. Breathing involves inhalation and exhalation. When we inhale, our lungs fill with oxygen. When we exhale, we release carbon dioxide. Next is the exchange of the gas. This happens in the lung in tiny exits called alveoli. Oxygen goes into the blood and carbon dioxide comes out of the blood to breathe out. So, one respiration means one breath in and one breath out, helping the body get oxygen and remove carbon dioxide. Now, let's look at how inhalation and exhalation works. Inhalation is the act of taking in air when the diaphragm contracts is moved downward, causing the thoracic cavity to expand. This creates negative pressure and air is drawn into the lungs. For exhalation is the act of breathing out. Here, the diaphragm relaxes and moves outward, making the thoracic cavity smaller. This creates positive pressure and air is pushed out of the lungs. This process repeats with every breath we take. Next, let's talk about the two types of the gas exchange, which is the external respiration and internal respiration. External respiration is the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the lung and the outside air. Oxygen enters the blood through the lungs and carbon dioxide is removed. Internal respiration happens inside the body between the blood and the body cell. Oxygen leaves the blood and enters the tissue, while carbon dioxide from the cell goes into the blood to be carried back to the lung. Both processes are important to keep our cells alive and working properly.
Begin the presentation by talking about some common respiratory disease. In the first place, we have asthma, a chronic disease where the bronchial tube become inflamed and narrow, often caused by allergy or exercises. Symptoms include wheezing and also shortness of breath. In the second place, we have the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. This is a group of diseases like chronic bronchitis, mainly caused by smoking, and it makes it hard to fully exhale. The third place, we have pneumonia. Pneumonia is an infection that inflames acid in one or both lungs. It can be caused by bacteria, viruses, or fungi. And last but not least, we have tuberculosis. TB is a serious bacterial infection that mainly affects the lung. and it can spread to the other parts of the body. Let's take a look on how asthma affects our respiratory system. When things like dust or smoke trigger the airways to react, the muscle around the airways tighten, the lining inside swells, and thick mucus is produced. This makes the airways narrow so less air can go through. Next, I proceed with some respiratory disorder. First, we have allergic rhinitis, where the allergen causes sneezing and runny nose. Second one is sleep apnea, a condition where breathing stops rapidly during sleep. And the last one is bronchitis, which can be acute or chronic and cause inflammation of the bronchial tube.
To conclude our presentation, the respiratory system plays a vital role in keeping us alive and healthy. It helps deliver oxygen to the body and remove carbon dioxide and allowing our cells to function properly. This system includes important organs like trachea, lungs, and diaphragm, all working together to make breathing possible. By learning about the structure and function of the respiratory system, we can truly understand how important it is for our overall health. That's why protecting it from diseases, pollution, and harmful habits like smoking is so important. A healthy respiratory system means a healthier, more active life, and it's our responsibility to take care of it.